Question 1. Strategic planning requires a comprehensive understanding of potential threats and vulnerabilities. When developing an approach to risk assessment for IBM Cognos 10BI environments, which of the following best ensures ongoing security and compliance? Option A. Focusing risk assessment exclusively on identifying technical vulnerabilities within the Cognos 10BI platform, without considering broader business context or potential operational impacts. Option B. Implementing a continuous risk assessment process that incorporates threat intelligence, regular vulnerability scanning, and periodic reassessment of business impact. Option C. Conducting a single, in-depth risk assessment at the time of initial deployment and relying on vendor patches for ongoing security. Option D. Prioritizing risk assessment efforts solely on threats that have recently made major headlines, assuming other risks are less critical. The correct answer is B. Implementing a continuous risk assessment process that incorporates threat intelligence, regular vulnerability scanning, and periodic reassessment of business impact. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the need for robust risk assessment with the practical constraints of a rapidly evolving threat landscape and limited resources. A thorough risk assessment is foundational to effective security strategy, but its implementation must be agile and adaptable. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it integrates continuous monitoring and periodic reassessment into the risk management lifecycle. This aligns with the principles of proactive security and compliance, ensuring that the organization's defenses remain relevant and effective against emerging threats. Regulatory frameworks, while not explicitly detailed here due to the exam's focus on a specific, implied jurisdiction, likely U.S.-centric given typical IT administration certifications, generally mandate that organizations maintain a current understanding of their risk posture. This approach demonstrates due diligence and a commitment to protecting sensitive data and systems, which is a core ethical and often legal responsibility. An incorrect approach that relies solely on an initial, static risk assessment fails to acknowledge the dynamic nature of cyber threats. This can lead to a false sense of security, leaving vulnerabilities unaddressed and increasing the likelihood of a security incident. From a regulatory perspective, this static approach could be seen as a failure to implement and maintain adequate security controls, potentially violating data protection laws or industry-specific compliance requirements that necessitate ongoing risk management. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes only the most high-profile threats, while seemingly efficient, overlooks the cumulative impact of lower-severity risks. This can create blind spots, allowing less publicized but still significant threats to proliferate and potentially coalesce into a larger breach. Ethically, this approach could be considered negligent if it leads to preventable harm to individuals or the organization due to unmanaged, albeit less dramatic, risks. A third incorrect approach that focuses exclusively on technical vulnerabilities without considering the business context or potential impact of exploitation misses the broader picture of risk. Risk is not solely a technical issue. It encompasses the potential for disruption to business operations, financial loss, reputational damage, and legal liabilities. Ignoring these non-technical aspects can lead to misallocation of resources and an incomplete understanding of the organization's true risk exposure. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk management framework that includes identification, assessment, mitigation, and ongoing monitoring. This process should be iterative and informed by intelligence on current threats, internal system changes, and business objectives. Professionals must advocate for the resources and processes necessary to conduct comprehensive and continuous risk assessments, ensuring that security measures are aligned with the organization's risk appetite and regulatory obligations. Question 2. Assessment of the most effective strategy for an IBM Cognos 10BI administrator to identify and mitigate potential security risks within the BI environment, considering the need to balance security with operational efficiency. Option A. Prioritize external network security measures and disregard internal system vulnerabilities and application-level security. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive, documented risk assessment that includes identifying critical assets, potential threats, vulnerabilities, and evaluating the likelihood and impact of identified risks. Option C. Implement security measures only in response to user-reported issues or after a security incident has occurred. Option D. Disable advanced security features and configurations to streamline administration and enhance system performance. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive, documented risk assessment that includes identifying critical assets, potential threats, vulnerabilities, and evaluating the likelihood and impact of identified risks. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires the IBM Cognos 10 BI administrator to balance the need for robust security and data integrity with the operational demands of providing timely access to critical business information. The administrator must assess potential risks associated with unauthorized access, data modification, and service disruption without unduly hindering legitimate user operations. This requires a nuanced understanding of the organization's risk appetite, regulatory compliance obligations, if any are specified by the exam's jurisdiction, which is assumed to be a general business context without specific regulatory mandates for this question, and the technical capabilities of Cognos 10 BI. The challenge lies in proactively identifying vulnerabilities and implementing controls that are effective, proportionate, and sustainable. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and documented risk assessment process. This begins with identifying critical data assets and business processes supported by Cognos 10 BI. Next, potential threats, e.g., malware, insider threats, configuration errors, and vulnerabilities, e.g., weak authentication, unpatched software, excessive user privileges, are identified. The likelihood and impact of these risks are then evaluated to prioritize mitigation efforts. This aligns with best practices in information security and IT governance, which emphasize a proactive, risk-based approach to security management. By focusing on understanding and quantifying risks, the administrator can make informed decisions about implementing appropriate security controls, such as access controls, auditing, and regular security patching, ensuring that resources are allocated effectively to address the most significant threats. This methodical approach is crucial for maintaining the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of business intelligence data. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing security measures solely based on user complaints or recent security incidents represents a reactive and potentially insufficient approach. While user feedback and incident response are important, they do not constitute a comprehensive risk assessment. Relying only on these factors can lead to a piecemeal security strategy that may overlook systemic vulnerabilities or emerging threats. This approach fails to proactively identify and address risks before they materialize, potentially leading to significant data breaches or operational disruptions. Furthermore, it may result in overinvesting in controls for minor issues while neglecting more critical areas. Disabling all advanced security features to simplify administration and improve performance is a fundamentally flawed approach. Security is not an optional add-on. It is an integral component of responsible IT management. Sacrificing security for ease of use or performance can expose the organization to severe risks, including data theft, regulatory noncompliance, if applicable, and reputational damage. This approach disregards the potential impact of security breaches on business operations and stakeholder trust, focusing exclusively on perimeter security measures without considering internal threats or application-level vulnerabilities is an incomplete risk assessment. While firewalls and network intrusion detection systems are important, they do not protect against threats originating from within the network or from compromised user accounts. A comprehensive risk assessment must consider all layers of security, including access controls, data encryption, and secure application development practices, to provide robust protection. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured risk management framework. This involves establishing a clear understanding of the organization's objectives and the data supporting them. The process should include asset identification, threat modeling, vulnerability analysis, risk evaluation, and the development of a risk treatment plan. Regular review and updates to the risk assessment are essential to adapt to evolving threats and business needs. When faced with competing priorities, professionals should always defer to the approach that best mitigates identified risks in a proportionate manner, ensuring compliance with any relevant organizational policies or external regulations. This systematic approach fosters accountability, transparency, and effective resource allocation in managing information security. Question 3. Comparative studies suggest that when faced with a sudden and significant degradation in IBM Cognos 10 BI performance impacting multiple users, a systematic approach to risk assessment is paramount. Which of the following actions best exemplifies a prudent and professional response to such a situation? Option A. Immediately revert all recent system configuration changes, as these are often the most probable cause of performance issues. Option B. Continue to monitor the system passively and wait for user complaints to escalate to a critical failure before initiating a full investigation. Option C. Focus on increasing server hardware resources, such as CPU and RAM, as this is the most direct way to alleviate performance bottlenecks. Option D. Prioritize identifying potential root causes, assessing their impact and likelihood, and then developing and implementing targeted mitigation strategies based on this analysis. The correct answer is A. Immediately revert all recent system configuration changes, as these are often the most probable cause of performance issues. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT administration where a critical business system, IBM Cognos 10 BI, is experiencing performance degradation. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate need for system availability and user productivity, with the imperative to conduct a thorough and systematic risk assessment, to identify the root cause and implement a sustainable solution. Rushing to implement a fix without proper assessment can lead to unintended consequences, further system instability, or the masking of underlying issues, potentially violating service-level agreements, SLAs, and impacting business operations. The administrator must navigate technical complexities, user impact, and the need for documented, justifiable actions. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a structured risk assessment process. This begins with clearly defining the scope of the problem, identifying potential causes, e.g., resource contention, configuration issues, data growth, network latency, and assessing the impact of each potential cause on business operations. This is followed by prioritizing risks based on their likelihood and impact. Subsequently, mitigation strategies are developed and evaluated for their effectiveness and feasibility. Implementing the highest priority mitigation, followed by rigorous testing and monitoring, represents best professional practice. This systematic approach ensures that the most critical risks are addressed first, minimizes disruption, and provides a documented rationale for actions taken, aligning with principles of good governance and operational resilience. While specific regulations for IBM Cognos 10 BI administration are not explicitly defined in a general sense, adherence to internal IT governance policies, change management procedures, and potentially industry-standard best practices for IT service management (ITSM) would be expected. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately reverting recent configuration changes without a proper risk assessment. This is problematic because it bypasses the diagnostic process. The recent changes might not be the root cause, and reverting them could disrupt ongoing operations or fail to address the actual performance issue, leading to continued user dissatisfaction and potential business impact. It represents a failure in systematic problem-solving and risk management. Another incorrect approach is to focus solely on increasing system resources, e.g., CPU RAM, without understanding the underlying cause of the performance bottleneck. While this might offer a temporary improvement, it is an inefficient use of resources and does not address the root cause. If the issue is a poorly optimized query or a configuration error, simply adding more hardware will not resolve it and could lead to unnecessary expenditure, a failure in cost-effective resource management. A third incorrect approach is to ignore user complaints until a critical failure occurs. This is a reactive and negligent stance. It fails to acknowledge the impact of performance degradation on business productivity and can lead to significant reputational damage and potential breaches of service-level agreements. It demonstrates a lack of proactive risk management and a disregard for user experience and business continuity. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a structured problem-solving framework. This typically involves 1. Problem identification and definition. Clearly articulate the issue and its impact. 2. Information gathering. Collect relevant data from logs, monitoring tools, and user feedback. 3. Root cause analysis. Employ techniques like the 5 whys or fishbone diagrams to identify underlying causes. 4. Risk assessment. Evaluate the likelihood and impact of identified causes. 5. Solution development and selection. Brainstorm and evaluate potential solutions based on risk mitigation, cost, and feasibility. 6. Implementation and testing. Deploy the chosen solution and thoroughly test its effectiveness. 7. Monitoring and review. Continuously monitor the system and review the effectiveness of the solution. This iterative process ensures that decisions are data-driven, risks are managed effectively, and solutions are sustainable. Question 4. Market research demonstrates that organizations are increasingly concerned about data security and regulatory compliance within their business intelligence platforms. As an IBM Cognos 10 BI administrator, you are tasked with developing a risk assessment strategy for the Cognos environment. Which of the following approaches best aligns with professional best practices and regulatory expectations for managing risks in such a system? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive review of all potential technical vulnerabilities within the Cognos 10 BI infrastructure, prioritizing remediation based on the severity of the technical flaw, irrespective of its business impact or regulatory implications. Option B. Focus the risk assessment solely on the technical configuration of Cognos 10 BI, excluding input from business stakeholders or compliance departments, as they are not directly involved in the system's technical administration. Option C. Implement a risk assessment process that systematically identifies, analyzes, and prioritizes risks based on their potential impact on business operations and likelihood of occurrence, developing specific mitigation plans for high-priority risks, and ensuring documentation for audit purposes. Option D. Rely on historical incident reports and anecdotal evidence from IT support staff to identify and address potential risks, assuming that past issues are indicative of future threats. The correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive review of all potential technical vulnerabilities within the Cognos 10 BI infrastructure, prioritizing remediation based on the severity of the technical flaw, irrespective of its business impact or regulatory implications. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between the need for robust risk assessment in a regulated environment and the practical constraints of resource allocation, and the potential for misinterpretation of risk. The IBM Cognos 10 BI administrator role operates within a framework where data integrity, security, and compliance are paramount. A failure to adequately assess risks associated with the Cognos environment can lead to significant regulatory penalties, data breaches, and reputational damage. The administrator must balance the theoretical ideal of comprehensive risk coverage with the practicalities of implementation and ongoing maintenance. Correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, documented, and iterative process for identifying, analyzing, and mitigating risks specific to the IBM Cognos 10 BI environment. This aligns with general IT governance principles and is implicitly supported by regulatory frameworks that mandate risk management for information systems. By focusing on the impact and likelihood of identified risks, and by developing actionable mitigation strategies, the administrator ensures that resources are directed towards the most critical vulnerabilities. This proactive stance is essential for maintaining compliance and protecting organizational assets. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on technical vulnerabilities without considering business impact or regulatory requirements is professionally unacceptable. This failure to contextualize risks within the broader organizational and regulatory landscape can lead to misallocation of resources, addressing minor technical issues while overlooking significant compliance gaps. Such an approach may also violate regulatory mandates that require a holistic view of risk, encompassing operational, financial, and legal implications. Another incorrect approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or past incidents without a structured assessment process is also professionally flawed. This reactive and unsystematic method lacks the rigor required for effective risk management in a regulated industry. It can lead to overlooking emerging threats or underestimating the likelihood and impact of known risks, thereby exposing the organization to undue harm and potential regulatory sanctions. Finally, an approach that neglects to involve relevant stakeholders, such as business unit managers or compliance officers, in the risk assessment process is professionally deficient. Risk assessment is not solely an IT function. It requires input from those who understand the business context and regulatory obligations. Without this collaboration, the assessment may be incomplete, inaccurate, and fail to address the true risk appetite and tolerance of the organization, leading to ineffective mitigation strategies and potential compliance failures. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk management framework. This typically includes defining the scope of the assessment, identifying potential risks, technical, operational, security, compliance, analyzing the likelihood and impact of each risk, evaluating the risk against the organization's risk appetite, developing mitigation strategies, implementing controls, and continuously monitoring and reviewing the risk landscape. Collaboration with business and compliance teams is crucial throughout this process. Question 5. To address the challenge of integrating a new data analytics tool that processes sensitive customer information, what is the most appropriate risk management approach for an IBM Cognos 10 BI administrator to adopt to ensure compliance and security? Option A. Prohibit the use of the new analytics tool due to the inherent risks associated with handling sensitive customer data, without exploring potential mitigation or alternative solutions. Option B. Prioritize rapid deployment of the analytics tool to meet immediate business demands, deferring detailed security reviews and control implementation to a later stage. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment involving relevant stakeholders to identify potential threats, vulnerabilities, and impacts, and develop appropriate mitigation strategies before full implementation. Option D. Rely solely on the vendor's security documentation and certifications to validate the tool's security posture, proceeding with implementation if the vendor claims compliance. Correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment involving relevant stakeholders to identify potential threats, vulnerabilities, and impacts, and develop appropriate mitigation strategies before full implementation. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in IT administration, balancing the need for robust security and compliance with the operational demands of a business. Specifically, the administrator must assess the risk associated with a new data analytics tool that could potentially expose sensitive customer information if not properly configured and secured. The challenge lies in the inherent tension between enabling business innovation and mitigating potential security breaches, which could lead to regulatory penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the risk assessment is thorough, objective, and aligned with the organization's risk appetite and regulatory obligations. The correct approach involves a systematic and documented risk assessment process that identifies potential threats, vulnerabilities, and the likelihood and impact of a security incident. This process should involve key stakeholders, including IT security, legal, compliance, and business unit representatives. By engaging these stakeholders, the administrator ensures that all relevant perspectives are considered and that the assessment is comprehensive. The outcome of this process should be a clear understanding of the risks and the development of appropriate mitigation strategies, such as implementing access controls, encryption, and regular security audits. This aligns with best professional practices by demonstrating due diligence, proactive risk management, and adherence to the principles of data protection and privacy, which are often mandated by regulatory frameworks. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the implementation without a formal risk assessment, relying solely on the vendor's security claims. This demonstrates a failure to exercise due diligence and a disregard for the organization's specific security posture and regulatory environment. Such an approach could lead to significant regulatory or ethical failures, including noncompliance with data protection laws, e.g., if customer data is mishandled, breach of contract with customers regarding data privacy, and a failure to uphold professional ethical standards related to safeguarding sensitive information. Another incorrect approach would be to prioritize immediate business needs over security concerns, implementing the tool with minimal security controls to expedite deployment. This represents a failure to adequately assess and manage risks, potentially exposing the organization to significant harm. Ethically, this demonstrates a lack of responsibility towards protecting customer data and the organization's assets. It also creates a precedent for neglecting security in favor of expediency, which can have long-term detrimental effects on the organization's security culture and compliance standing. A third incorrect approach would be to reject the tool outright due to perceived risks without a thorough assessment or exploring potential mitigation strategies. While caution is important, an overly risk-averse stance without exploring solutions can stifle innovation and hinder business growth. This approach fails to demonstrate a balanced risk management strategy and may not be aligned with the organization's defined risk appetite. Professionally, it suggests a lack of problem-solving skills and an inability to find pragmatic solutions that balance security with business objectives. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk management framework. This includes 1. Identifying the asset or system at risk, the new analytics tool and the data it will process. 2. Identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities. 3. Assessing the likelihood and impact of a security incident. 4. Evaluating existing controls and identifying gaps. 5. Developing and implementing mitigation strategies. And 6. Continuously monitoring and reviewing the effectiveness of controls. Engaging relevant stakeholders throughout this process is crucial for informed decision-making and ensuring buy-in for implemented solutions. Question 6. The efficiency study reveals that the process of granting temporary access to sensitive financial reports for ad hoc analysis by a cross-functional team is time-consuming and often leads to delays in decision-making. The IBM Cognos 10 BI administrator is tasked with improving this process. Which of the following actions best addresses this challenge while adhering to sound administrative practices? Option A. Implement a temporary, role-based access group with clearly defined, limited permissions for the duration of the ad hoc analysis, requiring explicit approval for each member's inclusion and a scheduled automatic revocation of access. Option B. Advise the cross-functional team to request individual report exports via email whenever they need data, bypassing the Cognos access system for faster retrieval. Option C. Document the current process as is and inform management that any changes would introduce security risks, suggesting the team work around the existing delays. Option D. Grant all members of the cross-functional team read-only access to the entire financial report folder within Cognos to ensure they can access any report they might need without delay. Correct answer is A. Implement a temporary role-based access group with clearly defined, limited permissions for the duration of the ad hoc analysis, requiring explicit approval for each member's inclusion and a scheduled automatic revocation of access. Explanation. The efficiency study reveals a potential bottleneck in the IBM Cognos 10 BI administrator's daily operations related to the management of user access and report distribution. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the administrator to balance operational efficiency with robust security and compliance. The core tension lies in streamlining processes without compromising the integrity of sensitive data or violating established access control policies. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any proposed solution not only speeds up tasks, but also maintains a secure and auditable environment. The correct approach involves a systematic risk assessment of the identified bottleneck. This means understanding the potential threats, vulnerabilities, and the impact of a security breach or unauthorized access. By prioritizing risks based on their likelihood and impact, the administrator can then implement targeted controls. This approach represents best professional practice because it is proactive and aligns with the principles of information security governance, which are implicitly expected in any IT administration role, including those governed by general IT best practices and the implicit duty of care to protect organizational data. It ensures that resources are allocated to address the most critical issues first, thereby minimizing potential damage and maintaining compliance with internal policies and potentially broader data protection regulations. Though specific regulations are not mandated for this exam, the principle of data protection is universal in professional IT. An incorrect approach would be to immediately implement a solution that bypasses existing security checks for the sake of speed. For example, granting broad access permissions to a wider group of users to expedite report delivery, even if it's a temporary measure, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This failure stems from a disregard for the principle of least privilege, a fundamental security concept. It increases the attack surface and the likelihood of unauthorized data disclosure or modification, which could lead to reputational damage, financial loss, and potential legal repercussions if specific data protection laws were in force. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the bottleneck entirely, assuming it is a minor inconvenience. This failure is one of omission, neglecting a known vulnerability that could be exploited, thus failing in the professional duty to maintain system integrity and security. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk management framework. First, identify the problem and its potential impact. Second, assess the risks associated with the current state and potential solutions. Third, evaluate and select appropriate controls or solutions based on the risk assessment, considering factors like cost, feasibility, and effectiveness. Fourth, implement the chosen solution and monitor its performance and impact. Finally, review and update the assessment and controls periodically. This iterative process ensures that administration remains aligned with business objectives while upholding security and compliance standards. Question 7. Risk assessment procedures indicate that unauthorized access to sensitive financial reports within IBM Cognos 10 BI poses a moderate threat to data integrity and confidentiality. The administrator is tasked with implementing enhanced security measures to mitigate this risk. Which of the following approaches best aligns with professional best practices for managing security in a regulated environment? Option A. Create a new, highly privileged administrative account specifically for accessing all financial reports, granting it broad permissions to simplify data retrieval for auditors. Option B. Immediately disable all direct access to financial reports and require users to submit written requests for data extracts, which will be manually generated by a senior administrator. Option C. Apply the most restrictive security settings possible to all Cognos objects, including financial reports, without further analysis of user roles or business impact. Option D. Implement a multi-factor authentication solution for all users accessing financial reports, coupled with a review of existing role-based access controls to ensure they are granular and strictly enforced, and document all changes through the formal change management process. The correct answer is D. Implement a multi-factor authentication solution for all users accessing financial reports, coupled with a review of existing role-based access controls to ensure they are granular and strictly enforced, and document all changes through the formal change management process. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT administration, balancing the need for robust security and compliance with the practical demands of system performance and user accessibility. The core difficulty lies in interpreting and applying security policies in a way that is both effective and efficient, without introducing undue risk or operational friction. The administrator must consider not only the technical implementation, but also the potential impact on business operations and the regulatory landscape governing data handling and access. The correct approach demonstrates best professional practice by prioritizing a systematic, risk-based methodology. It involves understanding the specific vulnerabilities and threats relevant to the Cognos environment, assessing the potential impact of those threats, and then implementing controls that are proportionate to the identified risks. This aligns with general principles of information security management, and in a regulated environment, will be further supported by specific data protection and privacy regulations that mandate risk assessment and appropriate security measures. The focus on documentation and ongoing review ensures accountability and adaptability, crucial for maintaining an effective security posture over time. An incorrect approach that bypasses established change control processes introduces significant regulatory and ethical risks. Failing to document changes or obtain necessary approvals can lead to non-compliance with internal policies and external regulations, such as those requiring audit trail and segregation of duties. This lack of oversight can obscure unauthorized access or malicious activity, making it difficult to investigate security incidents. Furthermore, implementing security measures without proper testing or consideration of their impact on system performance can lead to operational disruptions, potentially violating service-level agreements and impacting business continuity. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on the most restrictive security settings without a corresponding risk assessment, is inefficient and can hinder legitimate business operations. This over-securitization can lead to user frustration, workarounds that bypass security, and ultimately, a less secure environment. It also fails to demonstrate a reasoned, risk-based approach, which is often a requirement for compliance. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the business context and regulatory requirements. This involves identifying stakeholders, understanding their needs and concerns, and then evaluating potential solutions against established policies and risk appetite. A structured approach, incorporating risk assessment, impact analysis, and a formal change management process is essential. When faced with conflicting priorities, professionals should escalate to management or a designated governance body to ensure decisions are aligned with organizational strategy and risk tolerance. Question 8. Cost-benefit analysis shows that implementing a new advanced analytics module for IBM Cognos 10 BI could significantly enhance reporting capabilities and provide deeper business insights. However, this module requires additional server resources, specialized training for administrators, and a thorough review of data access controls to ensure compliance with data privacy policies. Which approach best aligns with professional best practices for evaluating and implementing such a change? Option A. Proceed with the implementation immediately to capitalize on the perceived competitive advantage offered by advanced analytics, assuming the benefits will outweigh the costs. Option B. Conduct a detailed cost-benefit analysis, including an assessment of resource requirements, training needs, and potential security and compliance risks, and present findings to key stakeholders for a collaborative decision. Option C. Defer the implementation until a future budget cycle, as the immediate resource and training costs are significant and may impact current operational budgets. Option D. Implement the module incrementally, focusing only on the most requested features first, to gauge user adoption and minimize initial investment. The correct answer is A. Proceed with the implementation immediately to capitalize on the perceived competitive advantage offered by advanced analytics, assuming the benefits will outweigh the costs. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge for IBM Cognos 10 BI administrators, balancing the desire for enhanced reporting capabilities with the practical constraints of resource allocation and potential security risks. The professional challenge lies in making an informed decision that aligns with organizational objectives, regulatory compliance, and efficient system management, rather than simply adopting the latest features without due diligence. Careful judgment is required to assess the true value proposition of each proposed enhancement against its associated costs and risks. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a structured, evidence-based evaluation process. This involves a thorough cost-benefit analysis that considers not only direct financial costs, but also indirect costs such as training, implementation time, and potential performance impacts. Crucially, it also incorporates a risk assessment, particularly concerning data security and compliance with relevant regulations. By involving stakeholders and aligning the decision with strategic business goals, this approach ensures that any implemented solution delivers tangible value and maintains the integrity and security of the BI environment. This aligns with general principles of good IT governance and responsible data management, which are implicitly expected in professional practice, even without specific regulatory mandates for this exact scenario. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the perceived benefits of new features without a comprehensive cost-benefit analysis and risk assessment is professionally unacceptable. This could lead to the adoption of expensive, underutilized solutions or, worse, introduce security vulnerabilities. Such an approach fails to demonstrate due diligence and could result in financial waste and potential regulatory noncompliance if data security is compromised. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes immediate user requests without considering the broader impact on system stability, performance, or security is also professionally unsound. While user satisfaction is important, it should not come at the expense of the overall health and security of the BI platform. This can lead to a fragmented and unmanageable system, increasing long-term maintenance costs and risks. A third incorrect approach that neglects to involve key stakeholders, such as IT security and compliance teams, in the decision-making process is a significant ethical and professional failure. This oversight can lead to the implementation of solutions that inadvertently violate data privacy regulations or security policies, exposing the organization to legal and reputational damage. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic evaluation framework. This includes clearly defining the problem or opportunity, identifying potential solutions, conducting a thorough cost-benefit and risk analysis for each, consulting with relevant stakeholders, including IT, security, compliance, and business units, and finally, making a documented decision based on the comprehensive evaluation. This ensures transparency, accountability, and alignment with organizational objectives and regulatory expectations. Question 9. Consider a scenario where a department manager requests immediate, broad access to all financial reports within IBM Cognos 10BI for new team member, stating it's for onboarding and training purposes. The administrator has not previously encountered this specific request or a clearly defined policy for such broad access grants. Option A. Grant the new team member access to all financial reports, and then inform the manager and data owner after the access has been provisioned. Option B. Grant the manager's request for broad access immediately to facilitate the onboarding process, assuming the manager has vetted the new employee's need. Option C. Review the existing access controls for the financial reports. Identify the minimum required permissions for the new team member's role based on their job description, and then implement those specific permissions after obtaining approval from the relevant data owner or security officer. Option D. Deny all access to financial reports for the new team member until a comprehensive, formal policy for all types of data access is drafted and approved by senior management. The correct answer is C. Review the existing access controls for the financial reports. Identify the minimum required permissions for the new team member's role based on their job description, and then implement those specific permissions after obtaining approval from the relevant data owner or security officer. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT administration, balancing the need for efficient system management with the imperative to protect sensitive data. The professional challenge lies in interpreting and applying the IBM Cognos 10BI administrator's responsibilities within the context of data security and access control policies, which are often governed by internal organizational guidelines and potentially broader data privacy regulations. Though for this exam, we focus solely on the provided framework, the administrator must make a judgment call that upholds the integrity of the system and the data it contains, while also ensuring authorized users can perform their duties. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic and documented process for granting access. This involves understanding the principle of least privilege, where users are granted only the permissions necessary to perform their job function. By reviewing existing access levels, identifying discrepancies, and implementing a controlled change process, the administrator ensures that access is granted based on legitimate business needs and is auditable. This aligns with the professional responsibility to maintain system security and data confidentiality, preventing unauthorized access and potential data breaches. The emphasis on documentation and approval processes also supports compliance and accountability. An incorrect approach that involves immediately granting broad access without verification fails to adhere to the principle of least privilege. This creates a significant security risk, as it could inadvertently expose sensitive data to individuals who do not require it for their roles. Such an action would be a failure of professional due diligence and could violate internal security policies designed to protect data. Another incorrect approach, such as denying all access requests until a formal policy is established, while seemingly cautious, can be professionally detrimental if it unduly impedes legitimate business operations. While policy is important, an administrator also has a responsibility to facilitate necessary access in a controlled manner. This approach lacks the proactive problem-solving expected of a professional, potentially leading to operational bottlenecks and user frustration without a clear justification for the delay beyond the absence of a perfect policy. A third incorrect approach, such as implementing access based solely on user requests without any form of validation or approval, is a direct abdication of responsibility. This bypasses essential security controls and opens the door to unauthorized access, data misuse, and potential compliance violations. It demonstrates a lack of understanding of the administrator's role in safeguarding the system and its data. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve 1. Understanding the request and its business justification. 2. Assessing the potential security implications of granting the requested access. 3. Consulting relevant internal policies and guidelines. 4. Applying the principle of least privilege. 5. Implementing a controlled and documented process for granting or denying access, including necessary approvals. 6. Regularly reviewing access privileges to ensure they remain appropriate. Question 10. The investigation demonstrates that a new internal audit has identified potential vulnerabilities in how sensitive financial reports are accessed within the IBM Cognos 10 BI environment, suggesting that current access controls may not fully align with the organization's evolving data governance policies. The administrator is tasked with addressing these findings promptly. Which of the following represents the most professional and effective approach to remediating these identified vulnerabilities? Option A. Immediately implement stricter access controls by revoking all user access to the identified sensitive reports until a comprehensive review of individual user roles and permissions can be completed, ensuring no unauthorized access occurs in the interim. Option B. Initiate a phased approach to remediation, starting with a thorough impact assessment of current access patterns, followed by consultation with business unit leaders to understand their reliance on these reports, and then implementing targeted access control adjustments in alignment with updated policy guidelines, all managed through the formal change control process. Option C. Proceed with implementing access control changes based on a personal interpretation of the audit findings and the organization's data governance policies, without consulting other departments or following formal change management procedures, to expedite the resolution. Option D. Rely on the existing security configurations, assuming they are sufficient, and document the audit findings as a low-priority item to be addressed during the next scheduled system maintenance cycle, which is several months away. Correct answer is A. Immediately implement stricter access controls by revoking all user access to the identified sensitive reports until a comprehensive review of individual user roles and permissions can be completed, ensuring no unauthorized access occurs in the interim. Explanation. The investigation demonstrates a common challenge in enterprise IT environments, balancing the need for robust security and compliance with the operational demands of a dynamic business. In the context of IBM Cognos 10 BI administration, this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the administrator to make critical decisions that directly impact data integrity, user access, and adherence to internal policies and potentially external regulations. Though this question focuses on best practices within the framework of the exam, implying adherence to general IT governance principles, the administrator must interpret and apply security policies effectively without unduly hindering legitimate business operations. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, documented, and risk-aware methodology. By involving stakeholders, conducting thorough impact assessments, and adhering to change management protocols, the administrator ensures that security enhancements are implemented in a controlled and justifiable manner. This aligns with the principles of good governance, accountability, and due diligence expected of IT professionals. It minimizes the risk of unintended consequences, data breaches, or compliance violations. An incorrect approach that involves immediately disabling all user access to sensitive reports without proper consultation or a phased rollout represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This action could lead to operational disruption, impacting business-critical decision-making and potentially violating service-level agreements or internal policies regarding system availability. It demonstrates a lack of understanding of business impact and a failure to follow established change management procedures, which are often implicitly or explicitly tied to regulatory compliance frameworks that mandate controlled system modifications. Another incorrect approach, such as implementing security measures based solely on personal interpretation of vague guidelines without seeking clarification or validation, is professionally unacceptable. This can lead to inconsistent application of policies, overrestriction of access, or, conversely, insufficient security, both of which carry risks. It shows a failure to engage with the governance structure and a lack of due diligence in understanding the precise requirements and their implications. A further incorrect approach, like deferring security updates indefinitely due to perceived operational inconvenience, is a direct contravention of professional responsibility. This posture creates significant vulnerabilities, exposing sensitive data to unauthorized access or modification, which can have severe legal, financial, and reputational consequences. It demonstrates a disregard for risk management and a failure to uphold the duty of care inherent in managing critical IT systems. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Understand the objective. Clearly define the security or compliance requirement. 2. Assess the impact. Evaluate the potential business and operational consequences of implementing the change. 3. Consult stakeholders. Engage with relevant business units, IT security, and compliance teams to gather input and ensure alignment. 4. Develop a plan. Outline the steps for implementation, including testing, rollback procedures, and communication. 5. Execute and monitor. Implement the change according to the plan and monitor its effectiveness and impact. 6. Document everything. Maintain detailed records of decisions, actions, and outcomes. Question 11. Upon reviewing a request for temporary access to sensitive financial reports within IBM Cognos 10BI for new project team member, which of the following approaches best adheres to professional best practices for system administration and security? Option A. Providing the user with a temporary password that expires after 24 hours, allowing them to access all reports within the financial reporting folder without further verification. Option B. Granting the user immediate access to the required reports based on a verbal confirmation from their direct manager, with a note to document the access later. Option C. Creating a shared project access account with broad permissions that the team can use to access the reports, ensuring the project stays on schedule. Option D. Requiring a formal, written access request detailing the specific reports needed, the business justification, and obtaining approval from the designated data owner before granting access. The correct answer is B. Granting the user immediate access to the required reports based on a verbal confirmation from their direct manager, with a note to document the access later. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate need for system access with the long-term implications of security and compliance. Administrator must ensure that granting access does not inadvertently create vulnerabilities or violate established security policies, which are often tied to regulatory requirements for data protection and auditability. Careful judgment is required to assess the risk associated with each access request and to implement controls that mitigate those risks effectively. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a documented, risk-based decision-making process by requiring a formal request, justification, and approval from a designated authority. The administrator establishes a clear audit trail. This aligns with the principles of good governance and compliance, ensuring that access is granted only when necessary and with appropriate oversight. This method minimizes the risk of unauthorized access, data breaches, and non-compliance with potential regulatory mandates concerning data handling and system security. An incorrect approach that involves granting immediate access without proper documentation or justification fails to establish accountability and creates a significant security risk. This could lead to unauthorized data access or modification, which would be a direct violation of data protection principles and could have severe regulatory consequences if sensitive information is compromised. Another incorrect approach, such as granting access based solely on a verbal request from a senior manager, bypasses established security protocols and introduces a high risk of unauthorized access. This practice undermines the integrity of the access control system and can lead to a breakdown in the audit trail, making it impossible to track who accessed what data and when. This lack of control is a direct contravention of best practices for system administration and security and could expose the organization to significant regulatory penalties. A third incorrect approach, which involves creating a generic emergency access account that is shared among multiple users, is highly problematic. This approach completely obliterates the audit trail, as it becomes impossible to determine which individual user performed specific actions. This is a critical failure in terms of accountability and compliance, as it prevents the organization from investigating security incidents or demonstrating adherence to data access policies. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a systematic evaluation of each access request. This includes understanding the business need for the access, assessing the potential risks associated with granting it, and ensuring that the request adheres to established organizational policies and any relevant regulatory frameworks. When in doubt, it is always best to err on the side of caution and seek further clarification or approval, rather than compromising security or compliance. Question 12. Benchmark analysis indicates that a significant portion of IBM Cognos 10 BI environments are configured with security settings that do not fully align with best practices for data governance and regulatory compliance. Considering the need to balance data accessibility with robust protection of sensitive information, which of the following approaches represents the most effective strategy for managing user access and permissions within the Cognos 10 BI platform? Option A. Deactivate all security features within IBM Cognos 10 BI to streamline administration and provide unrestricted access to all users. Option B. Implement a comprehensive role-based security model, leveraging Cognos groups and roles to assign granular permissions to reports, data sources, and other objects based on the principle of least privilege. Option C. Configure security exclusively at the Cognos connection level, allowing users to connect to the BI server, but without specific object-level restrictions on reports or data. Option D. Grant all authenticated users read access to all published reports and data sources to ensure maximum data availability for business analysis. The correct answer is B. Implement a comprehensive role-based security model, leveraging Cognos groups and roles to assign granular permissions to reports, data sources, and other objects based on the principle of least privilege. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise BI administration, balancing the need for robust security and access control with the operational demands of user productivity and data accessibility. The administrator must navigate potential conflicts between strict adherence to security policies and the practical requirements of business users who need timely access to information for decision-making. Overly restrictive measures can hinder business operations, while overly permissive settings can expose sensitive data and violate compliance mandates. The professional challenge lies in implementing a solution that is both secure and effective, requiring a deep understanding of the IBM Cognos 10 BI security model, organizational data sensitivity, and relevant regulatory compliance frameworks. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a granular, role-based security model that aligns with the principle of least privilege. This means granting users only the minimum access necessary to perform their job functions. Implementing this through Cognos groups and roles, coupled with object-level permissions on reports, queries, and data sources, ensures that access is controlled precisely. This methodology directly supports regulatory compliance by minimizing the risk of unauthorized data access and disclosure, which is a core tenet of data protection regulations. It also promotes operational efficiency by ensuring users can access the data they need without unnecessary hurdles, while maintaining a strong security posture. This approach is best professional practice because it proactively addresses security risks and compliance requirements in a structured and manageable way. Incorrect approach is analysis. Granting all users read access to all published reports and data sources is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach violates the principle of least privilege and creates an unacceptable risk of unauthorized access to sensitive or confidential information. Depending on the jurisdiction and the nature of the data, this could lead to breaches of data privacy laws, industry-specific regulations, e.g., financial services, healthcare, and contractual obligations. It also exposes the organization to reputational damage and potential legal penalties. Implementing security solely at the Cognos connection level, without considering object-level permissions for reports and data models, is also problematic. While it provides a basic layer of security, it fails to account for the varying sensitivity of different reports or data sets within the Cognos environment. This can lead to users accessing information they are not authorized to see, even if they can connect to the Cognos service. This lack of granularity increases the risk of data leakage and noncompliance with data governance policies. Disabling all security features to simplify administration and maximize user access is the most egregious failure. This completely disregards all security best practices and regulatory requirements. It essentially creates an open system, making the organization highly vulnerable to data breaches, intellectual property theft, and noncompliance with virtually all data protection and privacy laws. This approach is fundamentally unethical and professionally irresponsible, demonstrating a severe lack of diligence and understanding of the administrator's duties. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this role must adopt a risk-based approach to security and access control. This involves understanding the data landscape, identifying sensitive information, and mapping user roles to specific data access needs. The decision-making process should prioritize compliance with relevant regulations, e.g., GDPR, CCPA, HIPAA, depending on the jurisdiction and data type, and internal security policies. When faced with competing demands, the administrator should consult with data owners, legal counsel, and compliance officers to ensure that any implemented solution meets all requirements. Regular audits and reviews of access controls are also crucial to maintain an effective security posture and adapt to evolving threats and regulatory landscapes. Question 13. Examination of the data shows that the standard reporting process for critical financial performance metrics is experiencing significant delays, impacting the ability of the executive team to prepare for an upcoming board review. As the IBM Cognos 10 BI administrator, you have been asked to provide the necessary data urgently. Which of the following approaches best balances the immediate business need with the imperative to maintain data integrity, security, and regulatory compliance? Option A. Manually compiling the required financial data by querying individual source systems and consolidating the information in a spreadsheet for immediate delivery. Option B. Developing a custom, ad hoc SQL script to pull the specific data points requested by the executive team, bypassing the standard Cognos reporting framework for this instance. Option C. Investigating and utilizing pre-existing, validated data cubes or approved Cognos reports that can be refreshed or adapted to meet the urgent need, while ensuring all access controls and security policies are adhered to. Option D. Granting direct, read-only access to the underlying financial data tables in the data warehouse to the executive team, instructing them on how to extract the required information themselves. The correct answer is D. Granting direct, read-only access to the underlying financial data tables in the data warehouse to the executive team, instructing them on how to extract the required information themselves. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise BI administration, balancing the need for timely data access with the imperative to maintain data integrity and security. The administrator is tasked with providing access to sensitive financial data for a critical business review, but the standard reporting process has been experiencing delays. This creates a tension between business urgency and established operational procedures, requiring careful judgment to avoid compromising data accuracy or violating access controls. The professional challenge lies in identifying a solution that is both expedient and compliant with internal policies and any relevant data governance regulations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves leveraging existing, approved mechanisms for expedited data retrieval while ensuring all necessary security and access protocols are maintained. This might include utilizing predefined data extracts that are regularly refreshed or engaging with the data warehousing team to generate a specific, validated report that adheres to established data quality checks. This method represents best professional practice because it prioritizes data integrity and security, which are paramount in financial reporting. It aligns with the principle of least privilege and ensures that data is accessed and presented in a controlled, auditable manner, thereby mitigating risks of unauthorized access or data manipulation. This approach also demonstrates proactive problem-solving within the established governance framework. Incorrect approaches analysis. Directly providing raw database access to the business users is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This bypasses established data governance, security, and access control policies. It increases the risk of data breaches, unauthorized data modification, and the generation of inaccurate reports due to users misinterpreting raw data. Furthermore, it violates the principle of least privilege, exposing sensitive financial information beyond what is necessary for the user's roles. Creating a custom, ad hoc script to pull data without proper validation or review is also professionally unacceptable. This approach circumvents established data quality assurance processes, leading to a high probability of data inaccuracies. It also creates an unmanaged data artifact, making it difficult to audit or reproduce the results, and potentially introducing security vulnerabilities if not handled with extreme care. This failure to adhere to data quality standards can lead to flawed business decisions based on incorrect information, with potential financial repercussions. Attempting to manually compile data from disparate sources without a defined process or validation is another ethically and regulatorily unsound approach. This is highly prone to human error, leading to incomplete or inaccurate data. It lacks any audit trail, making it impossible to verify the source or accuracy of the information. This can result in significant compliance issues, especially if the data is used for regulatory filings or critical business decisions. Professional reasoning. Professionals in BI administration must adopt a risk-based decision-making process. When faced with urgent requests that conflict with standard operating procedures, the first step is to understand the business need and the urgency. Subsequently, evaluate all available approved methods for data retrieval, prioritizing those that maintain data integrity and security. If standard processes are insufficient, escalate the issue to relevant stakeholders, e.g., data governance, security teams, to explore approved exceptions or expedited workflows. Documentation of any deviations or special procedures is crucial for auditability and accountability. The core principle is to always operate within the established regulatory and ethical framework, even under pressure. Question 14. Performance analysis shows that a critical IBM Cognos 10 BI report is experiencing significant slowdowns, impacting user productivity and potentially violating service-level agreements. The administrator has identified a potential configuration parameter that, if adjusted, could resolve the issue. What is the most appropriate course of action to address this performance degradation while adhering to best practices for IT administration in a regulated environment? Option A. Immediately adjust the identified configuration parameter in the production Cognos environment to restore report performance, documenting the change retrospectively. Option B. Develop a documented solution to adjust the configuration parameter. Test it thoroughly in a non-production environment, obtain necessary change management approvals, and implement it during a scheduled maintenance window, followed by monitoring. Option C. Directly contact the IBM support team for an immediate hotfix, bypassing internal change management procedures to expedite the resolution. Option D. Inform users of the performance issue and advise them to avoid running the affected report until a solution can be found, without immediate action. The correct answer is A. Immediately adjust the identified configuration parameter in the production Cognos environment to restore report performance, documenting the change retrospectively. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in a regulated environment where performance degradation directly impacts user experience and potentially compliance with service-level agreements, SLAs. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate need for performance improvement with the strict adherence to established change management processes and the potential impact on data integrity and security. A hasty, undocumented change, even if seemingly effective in the short term, can introduce unforeseen risks, audit failures, and security vulnerabilities, all of which are critical in a governed IT landscape. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic, documented, and controlled process for addressing the performance issue. This aligns with best professional practices for IT administration in regulated environments. Specifically, it emphasizes 1. Thorough root cause analysis. Understanding the underlying problem prevents superficial fixes that might mask deeper issues or create new ones. 2. Developing a documented solution. This ensures reproducibility, traceability, and a clear understanding of the changes made. 3. Testing the solution in a non-production environment. This mitigates the risk of introducing errors into the live system. 4. Obtaining necessary approvals. Adhering to change management protocols ensures that the impact of the change is assessed by relevant stakeholders and that the organization's risk appetite is considered. 5. Implementing the change during a scheduled maintenance window. This minimizes disruption to end users and allows for rollback if issues arise. 6. Post-implementation monitoring. Verifying the effectiveness of the fix and ensuring no new problems have been introduced. This methodical approach upholds principles of accountability, risk management, and operational integrity, which are paramount in maintaining a compliant and reliable IT infrastructure. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing a fix without proper documentation or testing is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It bypasses critical control points designed to prevent errors and unauthorized changes. This can lead to audit failures. Lack of documentation makes it impossible to demonstrate compliance with internal policies and external regulations. Security vulnerabilities. Undocumented changes might inadvertently open security holes or weaken existing controls. Data integrity issues. Unforeseen side effects of a quick fix could corrupt or compromise data. Lack of accountability. Without a clear record of who made what change and why, it's difficult to assign responsibility if something goes wrong. Increased risk of future failures. A poorly understood or implemented fix can lead to recurring or more severe problems down the line. Making changes without stakeholder approval or outside of scheduled windows demonstrates a disregard for established governance and can disrupt business operations, leading to potential SLA breaches and reputational damage. Professional reasoning. Professionals in regulated environments must adopt a risk-based, process-driven approach. When faced with performance issues, the decision-making process should involve 1. Prioritizing the issue based on its impact on business operations and compliance. 2. Initiating a formal incident management process. 3. Conducting a thorough investigation to identify the root cause. 4. Developing and documenting potential solutions, including their risks and benefits. 5. Evaluating solutions against organizational policies, change management procedures, and regulatory requirements. 6. Seeking appropriate approvals before implementation. 7. Executing changes in a controlled manner with rollback plans. 8. Verifying the success of the change and closing the incident. This structured approach ensures that all actions are justifiable, traceable, and aligned with the organization's commitment to security, compliance, and operational excellence. Question 15. The risk matrix shows a high likelihood of user dissatisfaction if the new sales performance dashboard is not deployed within the next 2 weeks. However, the proposed data source integration for this dashboard has not undergone the full regression testing cycle due to resource constraints. What is the most professionally responsible approach for the IBM Cognos 10 BI administrator? Option A. Deploy the dashboard with the existing integration, assuming the risk of potential data inaccuracies or performance issues is acceptable given the business urgency. Option B. Delay the deployment of the dashboard until the full regression testing cycle is completed to ensure data integrity and system stability. Option C. Implement a simplified version of the dashboard using only pre-validated data sources and inform the business unit that the full scope will be delivered in a subsequent phase. Option D. Proceed with the deployment of the dashboard, but implement a temporary data validation process for the initial period and communicate the known limitations to the business unit. The correct answer is D. Proceed with the deployment of the dashboard, but implement a temporary data validation process for the initial period and communicate the known limitations to the business unit. Explanation. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in enterprise BI environments, balancing the need for rapid deployment of new reporting capabilities with the imperative to maintain data integrity and security. The challenge lies in the inherent tension between business unit demands for immediate access to insights and the IT department's responsibility to ensure that data is accurate, secure, and compliant with internal policies and any relevant external regulations. Though for this exam, we focus solely on the IBM Cognos 10 BI Administrator Framework and its implied best practices within a typical enterprise context. The correct approach prioritizes a structured, phased implementation that includes thorough testing and validation. This aligns with best professional practice by ensuring that any new data sources or report modifications are rigorously reviewed for accuracy, performance impact, and security vulnerabilities before being released to end users. This methodical process minimizes the risk of introducing errors, compromising sensitive data, or negatively impacting the performance of the existing Cognos environment. It demonstrates a commitment to delivering reliable and trustworthy business intelligence, which is fundamental to effective decision-making and operational efficiency. An incorrect approach that bypasses or inadequately performs testing and validation poses significant regulatory and ethical risks. For instance, deploying reports with inaccurate data can lead to flawed business decisions, potentially resulting in financial losses or reputational damage. Failing to address security vulnerabilities could expose sensitive customer or financial information, leading to breaches and non-compliance with data protection principles. Rushing the implementation without proper change control procedures increases the likelihood of system instability and operational disruption, undermining user confidence in the BI platform. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that emphasizes risk assessment and mitigation. This involves understanding the potential impact of any change on data accuracy, system performance, and security. A robust change management process, including clear approval workflows, comprehensive testing plans, and rollback strategies, is essential. When faced with pressure for rapid deployment, professionals must advocate for adherence to these established procedures, clearly communicating the risks associated with shortcuts and prioritizing the long-term health and reliability of the BI system. Question 16. Analysis of the most effective strategy for implementing data security and access controls for sensitive customer information within IBM Cognos 10 BI, considering the need to balance user accessibility with regulatory compliance and data privacy requirements. Option A. Implement extremely strict security measures that prevent any user from accessing data unless they have a documented critical business need, even if it hinders legitimate analysis. Option B. Grant all users full access to all data sources and reports, trusting them to only access information relevant to their roles. Option C. Restrict access only at the report level, assuming that users will not attempt to access underlying data directly. Option D. Implement granular security at the data source level, leverage Cognos capabilities, roles, and object security, and consider data masking for highly sensitive fields, coupled with regular security audits and clear data governance policies. The correct answer is D. Implement granular security at the data source level, leverage Cognos capabilities, roles, and object security, and consider data masking for highly sensitive fields, coupled with regular security audits and clear data governance policies. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in enterprise BI environments, managing the lifecycle of sensitive data within IBM Cognos 10 BI. The challenge lies in balancing the need for data accessibility for legitimate business analysis with the imperative to protect sensitive information from unauthorized access or disclosure, especially when dealing with personally identifiable information, PI, or confidential business data. The administrator must navigate technical capabilities, user roles, and potential compliance requirements without compromising data integrity or security. The difficulty arises from the interconnectedness of data, security models, and reporting needs, where a seemingly minor change can have widespread implications. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a multifaceted strategy that prioritizes data security and compliance from the outset. This includes implementing robust access controls at the data source level, leveraging Cognos security features like capabilities, roles, and object security to restrict access to sensitive data and reports, and employing data masking or anonymization techniques where appropriate. Furthermore, establishing clear data governance policies and conducting regular security audits are crucial. This approach aligns with best practices for data protection and regulatory compliance, ensuring that data is accessed and used only by authorized personnel for legitimate business purposes. It proactively mitigates risks associated with data breaches and noncompliance. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to rely solely on Cognos report-level security without addressing underlying data source permissions. This is a significant regulatory and ethical failure because it assumes that restricting access to the report itself is sufficient, while the raw sensitive data remains accessible to users with broader data source privileges. This creates a loophole for unauthorized data extraction and violates principles of least privilege and data minimization. Another incorrect approach is to grant broad access to all data and reports, assuming that users will self-regulate their data consumption. This is a critical failure in professional responsibility and ethical conduct. It demonstrates a disregard for data privacy regulations and internal security policies, exposing the organization to substantial risks of data misuse, breaches, and reputational damage. It also fails to uphold the administrator's duty to protect sensitive information. A third incorrect approach is to implement overly restrictive security that prevents legitimate business users from accessing necessary data, leading to workarounds that bypass official channels. While seemingly secure, this approach can lead to shadow IT, data silos, and ultimately, a loss of control over data usage. Ethically, it hinders productivity and can be seen as a failure to support business objectives. From a compliance perspective, it can create an environment where data governance is circumvented, potentially leading to non-compliance in practice. Professional reasoning. professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to data security and access management. This involves identifying sensitive data, understanding its classification, and assessing the potential impact of unauthorized access. The principle of least privilege should guide all access control decisions. Regular training and awareness programs for users on data security and privacy are essential. When implementing security measures, administrators should consider the business impact and strive for a balance between security and usability. Documentation of security configurations, access policies, and audit trails is critical for demonstrating compliance and facilitating troubleshooting. In any implementation challenge, consulting with data governance, legal, and compliance teams is a vital step in ensuring adherence to all relevant regulations and ethical standards. Question 17. The monitoring system demonstrates a significant increase in resource utilization after a recent configuration change aimed at capturing more detailed performance metrics. As an IBM Cognos 10BI administrator, you need to address this implementation challenge while ensuring continued operational stability and adherence to best practices. Which approach would be most professionally sound? Option A. Gradually roll out the new monitoring configuration to a subset of servers, monitor performance and data quality, and then incrementally expand the deployment based on the findings. Option B. Immediately roll back the configuration change to its previous state to restore system performance and investigate the issue offline. Option C. Implement the new configuration across all Cognos servers simultaneously to ensure consistent monitoring data collection. Option D. Configure the monitoring system to log all user actions and system events at the highest verbosity level to capture maximum detail for potential future analysis. The correct answer is B. Immediately roll back the configuration change to its previous state to restore system performance and investigate the issue offline. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in enterprise BI environments, ensuring that performance monitoring data, which is critical for operational efficiency and compliance, is both accurate and accessible without compromising system security or user experience. The challenge lies in balancing the need for comprehensive data collection with the potential for performance degradation and the risk of exposing sensitive system configurations or user activity logs. Administrators must make informed decisions about what data to collect, how to store it, and who can access it, all while adhering to internal policies and potentially external regulatory requirements related to data retention and auditability. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased implementation of enhanced monitoring, starting with a pilot group and gradually expanding based on performance impact and data utility. This aligns with best professional practices for system administration and change management. It allows for controlled testing, identification of potential bottlenecks or unintended consequences, and refinement of monitoring configurations before a full rollout. This iterative process minimizes disruption to the production environment and ensures that the monitoring solution is effective and efficient. From a regulatory and ethical standpoint, this approach demonstrates due diligence in managing system resources and data, ensuring that monitoring does not inadvertently lead to service degradation or data breaches. It also supports auditability by providing a well-documented and tested implementation. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing comprehensive monitoring across all servers simultaneously without prior testing is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It risks widespread performance degradation, potentially impacting critical business operations and leading to non-compliance with service-level agreements, SLAs. This approach shows a lack of due diligence and foresight. Configuring the monitoring system to log all user actions and system events at the highest verbosity level without a clear retention policy or access control mechanism is also problematic. This can lead to an unmanageable volume of data, increasing storage costs, and making it difficult to extract meaningful information for audits or troubleshooting. More importantly, it creates a substantial security risk by potentially logging sensitive user data or system credentials, which could be a violation of data privacy regulations and internal security policies. Disabling all security logging features to improve monitoring system performance is a direct contravention of audit and security best practices and likely regulatory requirements. Audit trails are essential for detecting and investigating security incidents, ensuring accountability, and demonstrating compliance. Disabling these features creates a blind spot, making it impossible to reconstruct events in the event of a breach or misuse, and severely undermining the integrity of the system. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based, iterative approach to implementing new system features, especially those that impact performance and data collection. This involves 1. Understanding the business and regulatory drivers for the monitoring solution. 2. Defining clear objectives for the monitoring system. 3. Conducting a thorough impact assessment, including performance and security considerations. 4. Developing a phased implementation plan with clear rollback procedures. 5. Establishing data retention, access control, and security policies for the collected data. 6. Continuously monitoring the performance and effectiveness of the solution post-implementation. This structured approach ensures that technical solutions are aligned with business needs, regulatory obligations, and ethical responsibilities. Question 18. The assessment process reveals that a critical business unit requires access to sensitive financial reports within IBM Cognos 10BI, but only specific managers within that unit should be able to modify the underlying data models used to generate these reports. The rest of the unit should only have read-only access to the reports themselves. Which of the following approaches best addresses this requirement while adhering to robust security and compliance best practices? Option A. Implement granular security by creating separate Cognos roles for financial report viewers and data model editors. Assign users to the appropriate role based on their job function, and then configure object security on the reports for read-only access and on the data models for edit access, ensuring users are only members of the role that grants them the necessary permissions. Option B. Create a Cognos role for the business unit. Assign all users within that unit to this role, and grant the role broad administrative capabilities to manage all content within the relevant Cognos folders. Option C. Disable all Cognos security features to ensure all users can access and modify any report or data model, simplifying administration and avoiding potential access issues. Option D. Rely exclusively on the operating system's file system permissions to control who can access the Cognos reports and data model files stored on the server. Correct answer is B. Create a Cognos role for the business unit. Assign all users within that unit to this role, and grant the role broad administrative capabilities to manage all content within the relevant Cognos folders. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a common implementation challenge in IBM Cognos 10BI environments. Ensuring data security and access control aligns with organizational policies and regulatory requirements. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a deep understanding of Cognos security models, the specific data being governed, and the underlying compliance mandates. Misconfigurations can lead to severe data breaches, regulatory penalties, and reputational damage. Careful judgment is required to balance usability with robust security. The correct approach, which involves leveraging Cognos' built-in security features like capabilities, roles, and object security to enforce granular access, represents best professional practice. This aligns with the principle of least privilege, a fundamental tenet of information security and regulatory compliance. By assigning specific capabilities to roles and then assigning users to those roles, administrators ensure that individuals only have access to the data and functionalities they absolutely need to perform their duties. This proactive security posture is crucial for meeting audit requirements and demonstrating due diligence in protecting sensitive information, as mandated by various data protection regulations. An incorrect approach that involves granting broad administrative privileges to a large group of users is professionally unacceptable. This violates the principle of least privilege and significantly increases the attack surface. Ethically, it demonstrates a disregard for data confidentiality and integrity. From a regulatory standpoint, such a broad grant of access would likely fail any audit and could lead to significant fines under data protection laws for failing to implement adequate security controls. Another incorrect approach, which is to disable all security features to simplify administration, is also professionally unacceptable and ethically reprehensible. This creates an open system where any user can access any data, leading to potential misuse, unauthorized disclosure, and data manipulation. This directly contravenes regulatory obligations to protect data and would result in severe legal and financial repercussions. A third incorrect approach, which is to rely solely on operating system file permissions to control access to Cognos content, is professionally flawed. While OS permissions are a layer of security, they are not designed for the granular, role-based access control required within a BI platform like Cognos. This approach fails to leverage Cognos's native security capabilities, making it difficult to manage and audit access effectively. It creates a fragmented security model, increasing the risk of misconfiguration and non-compliance with data governance policies and regulations that require specific application-level controls. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a thorough understanding of the data's sensitivity, the organization's security policies, and applicable regulatory frameworks. Administrators should then map these requirements to Cognos's security architecture, prioritizing the principle of least privilege. Regular audits and reviews of security configurations are essential to ensure ongoing compliance and to adapt to evolving threats and regulatory landscapes. Question 19. Research into the implementation of a new IBM Cognos 10 BI environment for financial reporting, a critical business function, has revealed a potential challenge. Ensuring the complete and accurate migration of historical and real-time data from the legacy system. The administrator must decide on the most robust approach to validate the data integrity post-migration to maintain user confidence and prevent erroneous financial analysis. Option A. Prioritize the rapid deployment of the new Cognos 10 BI environment to meet business deadlines, deferring any in-depth data validation until after the initial go-live. Option B. Implement a comprehensive data reconciliation process, comparing key financial metrics and data points between the legacy system and the new Cognos 10 BI environment, utilizing a statistically significant sample and targeted full comparisons for critical reports, followed by user acceptance testing. Option C. Assume the data transformation scripts are flawless and conduct only a superficial review of a few sample reports in the new Cognos 10 BI environment. Option D. Proceed with a direct migration of all data and reports, relying on end users to report any discrepancies they encounter in the new Cognos 10 BI environment. The correct answer is B. Implement a comprehensive data reconciliation process, comparing key financial metrics and data points between the legacy system and the new Cognos 10 BI environment, utilizing a statistically significant sample and targeted full comparisons for critical reports, followed by user acceptance testing. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in enterprise BI environments, ensuring data integrity and user trust when migrating a critical reporting system to a new platform. The professional challenge lies in balancing the urgency of migration with the absolute necessity of validating data accuracy and adherence to reporting standards. Failure to do so can lead to flawed business decisions. Regulatory non-compliance. If the reports are used for financial or compliance purposes, and a significant erosion of user confidence in the BI system, administrator must navigate technical complexities, stakeholder expectations, and the inherent risks of data transformation. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a phased, validated migration strategy. This involves establishing clear data validation checkpoints throughout the process. Specifically, it prioritizes a comprehensive data reconciliation between the old and new systems, using a statistically significant sample or, ideally, full data comparison for key metrics. This is best professional practice because it directly addresses the core risk, data inaccuracy. By systematically verifying that the data in the new Cognos 10 BI environment accurately reflects the source data and meets defined reporting requirements, the administrator ensures the integrity of the BI output. This aligns with general principles of data governance and quality assurance, which are implicitly required for any system supporting business operations. While specific regulations for IBM Cognos 10 BI administration are not provided, the underlying principle of data accuracy and reliability is a universal professional and ethical obligation in data management. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves prioritizing speed over validation. This might manifest as a lift and shift migration with minimal post-migration data checks. This is professionally unacceptable because it bypasses critical validation steps, creating a high risk of data discrepancies going unnoticed. If these reports are used for decision-making, it could lead to significant financial losses or operational errors. Ethically, it fails to uphold the duty of care to provide accurate information. Another incorrect approach might be to rely solely on user feedback after the migration. While user feedback is valuable, it is reactive and often identifies only the most glaring errors. It does not provide a proactive, systematic assurance of data integrity. This approach is professionally weak, as it abdicates the administrator's responsibility for ensuring data quality before widespread use. It also risks significant reputational damage if users discover widespread inaccuracies. A third incorrect approach could be to assume that the data transformation scripts are inherently perfect and require no verification. This is a dangerous assumption in any complex system migration. Technical errors in transformation logic are common, and without independent verification, these errors can propagate into the new reporting environment, leading to incorrect insights. This approach demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to implement robust quality control measures. Professional reasoning. Professionals faced with such implementation challenges should adopt a risk-based, iterative approach. First, identify critical data elements and reporting requirements. Second, design a migration plan that includes specific, measurable validation steps at each stage. Third, implement automated reconciliation processes where possible and manual verification for complex or sensitive data. Fourth, engage stakeholders early and often to manage expectations and gather feedback. Finally, maintain comprehensive documentation of the migration and validation process for auditability and future reference. This structured approach ensures that technical execution is underpinned by a commitment to data integrity and stakeholder trust. Question 20. The performance metrics show a significant increase in report generation times for a critical financial reporting application. You have identified that a senior analyst recently made unauthorized modifications to the Cognos configuration, believing they were optimizing performance. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action to address this situation? Option A. Immediately revert the unauthorized configuration changes to a previously known stable state, document the observed performance impact, and then schedule a meeting with the senior analyst to discuss the unauthorized changes and establish a formal process for future modifications. Option B. Continue to monitor the performance metrics without making any immediate changes, as the analyst may have indeed improved performance in ways not immediately apparent, and further investigation could be time-consuming. Option C. Escalate the issue to senior management without attempting to resolve it directly with the analyst or reverting the changes, citing a breach of protocol. Option D. Directly confront the senior analyst about the unauthorized changes and demand they revert them immediately, regardless of potential impact on their current work. The correct answer is A. Immediately revert the unauthorized configuration changes to a previously known stable state, document the observed performance impact, and then schedule a meeting with the senior analyst to discuss the unauthorized changes and establish a formal process for future modifications. Explanation. The performance metrics show a significant increase in report generation times for a critical financial reporting application managed by the IBM Cognos 10 BI administrator. This increase coincides with a recent, unauthorized modification to the Cognos configuration by a senior analyst who believed they were optimizing performance. The administrator is now faced with a dilemma: immediately revert the changes, potentially causing disruption and angering the senior analyst, or investigate further, risking continued performance degradation and potential compliance issues if the reports are used for regulatory filings. This scenario is professionally challenging because it pits the administrator's responsibility for system integrity and compliance against the desire to maintain positive working relationships and avoid immediate conflict. The unauthorized modification, even with good intentions, bypasses established change management protocols and introduces risk. The administrator must balance technical expertise with interpersonal skills and an understanding of the potential downstream impacts on business operations and regulatory adherence. The correct approach involves a systematic and transparent process that prioritizes system stability and compliance. This means immediately documenting the observed performance degradation and the suspected cause, the unauthorized configuration change. The administrator should then communicate with the senior analyst, explaining the observed impact and the need to revert the changes to a known stable state, while also offering to collaborate on a formal, documented performance tuning process. This approach upholds best professional practices by 1. Prioritizing system stability and data integrity, which are foundational to reliable reporting and compliance. 2. Adhering to established change management procedures, which are crucial for auditability and risk mitigation. 3. Fostering open communication and collaboration, even in challenging situations, to build trust and ensure future adherence to protocols. 4. Mitigating potential regulatory noncompliance by ensuring the reporting environment is stable and predictable. An incorrect approach would be to ignore the performance issue or to immediately revert the changes without communication. Failing to address the performance issue directly risks continued degradation, which could lead to missed deadlines for critical financial reports, potentially violating regulatory requirements for timely submission. This demonstrates a lack of diligence and accountability. Reverting the changes without prior communication with the senior analyst, while technically sound for system stability, could damage professional relationships and create an adversarial environment. It fails to address the underlying issue of unauthorized access and modification, which could recur. It also misses an opportunity to educate the analyst on proper procedures. The professional decision-making process should involve 1. Identifying the problem and its potential impact. 2. Gathering evidence and understanding the root cause. 3. Assessing risks associated with different courses of action. 4. Communicating transparently with relevant stakeholders. 5. Implementing the chosen solution in a controlled and documented manner. 6. Following up to ensure the issue is resolved and to prevent recurrence.